Justin, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Yigal. I'm happy to be here.
No, it's awesome. We met through a good friend of mine, David, and he had made a connection because I'm in the pawn industry. You guys are in the sales training industry. And we sat down for lunch a couple of times and I realized, one, I got to bring you on the podcast. And two, I think that, pawn shops need sales training in order to be able to grow, especially during this pandemic, especially with the holiday seasons coming up. So thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely. I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. So give us a quick rundown about Friedman. For those of you who don't know, Friedman's been around for a long time, but give us a quick history about Friedman.
Yeah, so the Friedman Group was started by Harry J. Friedman back in the 80s. And he just noticed something that was pretty common in the retail space, and that was the sales teams and salespeople just lacked training. There was a lot of people out there, a lot of people working retail, and they didn't have any training available to get their teams to perform at a high level. And he started out building these incredible workshops, of which I attended at a young age. And I was so inspired by everything he was saying. It made sense. A lot of it was actually common sense applied in a process, which I thought was really interesting. But what I also realized is many of the businesses I worked with didn't even do any of the stuff that he was preaching in his workshops. So fast forward a few years, we decide how great would this be to turn the Friedman Group's workshop delivery into an online platform. And we started Friedman U. And so we created this incredible online training program that pulls from all of the Friedman Group's best training content. That's sales training, management training, retail operations training. We loaded it all online and made it accessible to a large majority of retailers. And so you're no longer having to go to sort of these workshop type environments. You can get all the access and all the training you need fully online. And that's what we've been doing the last few years. And we've been trying to transform the retail space, one retailer at a time, by giving them and all their teams access to this very unique and very powerful sales training tool. And that's kind of where we're at.
I love it. And you guys have a great reputation. One of the pawnbrokers in the mastermind was talking about sales training and Friedman and how he went to a training many, many years ago. And then a couple of other people chimed in. So this is information that is incredible for retail, for sales, and still has stand the test of time, correct?
Correct. And awesome. I think we could share in the same experiences because I was always wowed by how Harry presented. And it was so inspiring and it was so professional. But it was difficult because once you finish the training, it's like, I got to get everybody else to go to that workshop, and the workshops aren't happening every weekend. So how do you still kind of get to the material without having to schedule, your team to fly out to a workshop? And that's kind of where we come in. It's taking that same energy and that same core content and making it readily accessible in real time. That's kind of what we're focusing on.
Love it. And just so that people know, obviously you guys have worked with a lot of retailers. I know you guys have worked with pawn shops before. What other types of retailers has Friedman worked with?
I mean, fill in the blank. It's every single one you can imagine. We've got, we specialized in jewelry, in high-end durable goods with a negotiable price. We have automotive. The high-end durable goods with a negotiable price are things like kitchen and bath, furniture, pool and spa. And we even go as far as CBD, smoke shops, right? We've gotten a ton of, the shoe and clothing retailers, traditional shoe and clothing retailers. And we worked with a lot of the big boys, Petco and Target, but we like to, we cut our teeth on the small players because those unique mom and pop stores, they actually have the most upside when you apply trainings like this, and they create a sense of community that's super important. And so we actually like to work with what we call the hidden champions, which is not necessarily the big guys that are everywhere. It's the 1 to 2 to 3 location mom and pop stores that have, really everything on the line and need to make it work. And we want to provide those tools to them, the tools that are going to make it work.
Love that, man. And before we get into kind of like the content that we're going to talk, because obviously I asked you to come on and I said, I want you to drop some amazing value to the listeners. What I want to find out from you is how have people been doing during what's happening right now, during the, what's going on in the world, and how important are sales now more than ever?
Yeah, look, COVID's impacted all of us. But the funny thing is retail's got a split. Some retailers are performing like crazy and they're breaking records left and right. And other ones are struggling. But what is consistent across the board is that the number of opportunities seemingly has gone down. Now, the quality of lead may have gone up. the people coming in are willing and ready to buy on those retailers that are performing. But one thing is sure, and overall traffic is down. So what happens when overall traffic is down? Well, it becomes more and more important to convert the traffic that's coming in. And so we've seen a lot of people kind of take a step back from doing any type of marketing efforts, which, is one thing we never really recommend. You should never stop your marketing process, even during a pandemic.
Agreed.
You have to create that hype and you have to create that traffic. But more importantly, once the traffic is in there, you spent all this money making sure people are coming through the door. What's happening when they're there? And we need to make sure we can control every step of the sales process so that we are maximizing the opportunities that come in. That becomes priority. And so right now, those retailers that are super successful, they've got very, very passionate and sales process focused salespeople on the floor. They know what they need to do to convert those individuals, how to follow up with them. They also know what to do now during COVID. What social distancing looks like in a retail environment, what cleanliness looks like, how you communicate the standards you have in place to your teams and to the customers. Super important, because customers are thinking about that right now. So it's just about kind of being aware of what's happening around and what are the key things we can do to communicate to our customers to make sure that they feel comfortable coming into the store. And a lot of people are still coming into the store. Yes, some people are not, and they want to communicate via social media or online. So you have to play a part in that too. But there are customers currently in a lot of areas that are coming in and still shopping. It's just a slightly different shopping experience, which requires a very knowledgeable sales staff. And that's what's changing.
I love that. You mentioned the fact that there's less, possibilities for sales to happen. But if you maximize each customer that walks in, you can be doing better than before as long as you have a well-trained staff. So let's jump into that. I want to give as much value as we can to the people listening. There's three things that you and I kind of talked about on the pre-interview. And the first one is that building confidence in your team. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, so our philosophy is that building a highly confident sales team is going to increase your sales. And before I get into that, I'm going to ask you a couple questions. In high school or in college, did you play any sports?
I did. I wrestled.
Awesome. So I played football and soccer. And I'm sharing this because I feel like a lot of us can relate to an experience with playing in a team. Here's one thing that is pretty consistent. How many times a week did you practice when you were on the wrestling team?
Crazy. It was twice a day, 5 days a week.
And how many matches did you have in 1 week?
Oh no, it was like one match like every 3 weeks or so.
Yeah. So you practice 5 times or 10 times a week for one match, right? Think about also in school when we're learning about education on anything, economics or business or, art. You are practicing every single day. You're practicing for weeks before you take your test. That's what you're practicing for. And the funny thing is, once you take the test or once you have the match or have the game, there's a follow-up. The coach watches what you did. You review it with him. You're talking about what you did well, what you need to improve on. And guess what you're doing the next week? Working on what you need to improve on. So we have this ingrained in our philosophy or our psychology as an individual. It's train, get tested, and then review, coach, train, get tested and review. Then we get into the workplace and all that goes away for some reason. It's like, I know that's what you grew up doing and it's gone. It's all gone. But we don't believe it should be gone because what happens is the reason why you are training in sports and in school every single day is so you can build confidence in what you know. That confidence is going to extend all the way through to game day. And game day is every day you're coming to work on the retail floor. So the question is, what have you done to train your teams? Now, confidence as a whole can be built 2 ways, through training and through experience. The problem with experience is if we're only hiring people that have this incredible amount of experience, then the pool is limited. Our hiring pool is limited. On top of that, we actually can't verify exactly what experience they had. Like, I don't know who that coach was over there that was training you. And you say you have 10 years of experience or 5 years of experience in sales, but how qualified is that experience? So we know confidence is built by training and experience. We can't verify the experience to a T. What we can do is verify training, which becomes the most pivotal part in building confidence at an early stage for any of your sales teams. What this also does is it identifies areas that your sales teams may have overlooked during their experiential process, and we can hone in and train them on those areas. So what we believe is to build a highly confident and high-performing sales team starts with training. And if you're not training them and you're not showing them every step of the sales process, they can't possibly be as confident as they need to be to engage with customers. And here's how it plays out in real life. If you are not a highly confident salesperson and you have a negative interaction with a customer, that shuts you down. I mean, it's really easy to have a great sales conversation when the guy comes in and says, hey, here's my money. I'm trying to buy something, like take my money. That's easy. And let's hope that that happens all the time. But when it doesn't happen, what naturally occurs in the human psychology is you get shut down. When you get shut down, you tend to be a little bit more reserved. You're not going to put yourself out there as much. And the reason you do that is because you lack confidence. I got shut down by this person. They didn't want to talk to me.
Sorry, when you say shut down, you mean like no, like the sale isn't happening?
Yeah, or just that you tried to engage with them when they walked in and they kind of brushed you off and they seemed a little, they have a wall up. We call it a barrier. What's the barrier they have up? A lot of people, when they walk into retail stores, they have this natural barrier. No, thanks, I'm just looking. Like that's the attitude. And if you're not confident in your ability and your approach, then that's going to shut you down. And when your manager asks you, hey, that guy walked in and spent 20 minutes in here, what happened? He was just looking. It's a bad answer. It's not the right answer. So what we do is we train salespeople to know how to properly engage with the customer right when they walk in. And let me tell you something, it's not how can I help you today? That is not what you do. It's the number one thing you don't want to do to open the sale. But on top of that, we train them on how to understand the customer's needs and how to ask probing questions and how to be a little funny with them. And ultimately, if you actually aren't connecting, how to appropriately turn it over. TO, we're going to turn this over to somebody else. Hey, I'm not connecting with this guy. Could you go over there and compliment their shoes? It's one of these things where it's a game. We're playing in a game. And in order for you to play your part, you need to be confident in your approach. And we know that it's really hard to come up with all this stuff on your own. It's really hard to do. And we don't want you to do it. What we want to do is we want to show you the steps that we know work, and we want you to practice those steps. When you practice those steps, you will become more confident on the sales floor. And when you become more confident, you will increase your sales because you'll know how to interact with customers. You'll know how to ask questions. You'll know every part of the process. And that's what's going to ultimately increase your sales. So you have to understand how building confidence increases sales. The way you build confidence, 2 prongs, training and experience. Experience, can't verify. Training, we can, as long as we have the right training tools. And that leads into Friedman U.
Just a quick story. My father had a sales guy, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong the way he did this. And you talk about confidence, and he comes to mind. Wore a suit every day, would walk in. A woman would walk into the pawn shop, and this is what he would say. He'd say, hey, honey, how can I take your money today? But he did it with so much confidence, sold it was incredible. And so now I see where the confidence fits in. It's not just knowing the product, but it's the confidence in the person and how they sell that product.
And look, I've worked with a number of different retail operations in the past. And I remember when I would drop down at a store level, I was a regional manager at the time, and I would work the sales floor with the team. And it was super funny because what I was showing them is the same steps of the sales process that we have, but I was doing so with such confidence that most of the time, and if you guys are listening and someone's ever asked you this, you know what I'm talking about. When you're done with the conversation or midway through, the person asks, do you own the place? Are you the owner? And the reason why is because they assume that the only person that could be this confident and this fun and this engaging, they must be the owner. And the reality is most of the time it probably is, but that's the difference between a sort of an average salesperson and a rock star. A rock star exudes so much confidence, the person's gonna go, you must own the place.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to get to. That's what we want your teams to get to. Everyone's gotta be like, hey, you must be the owner, or the son of the owner, or whatever you are. So that's what we're trying to get to.
I love that, man. And obviously, as you're building confidence and the team is working together, you talk about, having everyone speaking the same language.
Yeah. So number 2, speaking the same language. And this is about a sort of a level playing field. Think of it this way. You could say, well, look, I've got a manager and they train their teams on the sales process, and then they train on culture and they train on operations. And every manager is responsible for training every individual. And that's fantastic. It helps scale the training process. Or maybe you have a one trainer that goes around and trains everybody. Here's where the issue lies. When a trainer is responsible for delivering information, it is almost always the case that some part of that information either gets de-emphasized or overemphasized, or they leave it out entirely because it doesn't align with their pitch. their sales. Their sales pitch is their training.
Yeah.
And their job is to inspire you to become great. And when they do that, they just naturally leave out certain pieces. And I could probably challenge a lot of the listeners right now. You probably have that one store, that one manager is just a rock star. They're just a rock star. They're killing it. Their team is great. Their store is great. They're overperforming all the time. And all you want to do is replicate that person. So the most natural reaction to that is let's turn them into a regional manager or director of operations, which works about 10% of the time, because it's very difficult to transfer that sort of God-given ability to just inspire people. What's not difficult to transfer is the content that they're training on. On top of that, the delivery method of which they're training is super important. So let me take a step back. We talked about that dynamic manager. They're awesome. But then we have a manager that's not so awesome, but they're sharing the same content. So what's going on? Well, it could be the delivery. So what we try to do is we try to limit how much of the delivery is done by a manager or a trainer to only the things that are the absolute most important. And to us, the most important things you can train on are company culture, expectations, and operations that are unique to your business. That's what you need someone with a personality and sort of that dynamic ability to come in and help with. Yeah. What you don't need a dynamic trainer on is a process that you know works. This is the steps that we take to complete a successful sale. So what we have done is by putting the training online, you allow for a consistent platform to train on. Everybody can access the same way. You have predictability in the outcome, because I know if you go through this and learn that, you're going to take a quiz that's going to check your knowledge to make sure you understood the material. And then you're going to go to the next piece. So we're going back to sort of, high school and college days, but it's super important because that's what we're used to. Remember going back to that idea, like this has been ingrained in us from a young age. Yeah. I learn the material, I study the material, I take the test, and I pass. And I know as a manager that if you took the steps and passed, you're not ready for the next level and the next level. We want the jobs of a manager to be able to coach and inspire. A manager needs to coach and inspire. The nitty-gritty details around something like a sales process, which is super important, should not be left up to a manager to communicate in however they see fit. We need a consistent communication platform and a consistent message. That is what getting everybody on the same page means. And so that is one thing we truly believe, because we saw too much was lost in translation. When we were giving this training to managers and we were training the trainers, of course we do that. And yes, it does work, but it's not the quickest way to do it. And it's not the most cost-effective way to do it. The most cost-effective way is we know the platform, it's online. Guess what? Everybody has access. You can do it on your phone, you can do it on an iPad, you can do it on a computer, doesn't matter. Now we know the material is also consistent in how it's not just delivered, but how it's read and understood, because we quiz them at the end. So you have to pass the quiz to go on. So we're just trying to go back to what we all know to be an effective learning solution on a very, very important concept that requires you sometimes to kind of go back and reference. Like what happens if you go through training for 3 hours? You're like, God, I didn't really understand that part about adding on. Well, guess what? The trainer's gone, or now they're going to train the next person. So it's harder to kind of grab them and say, hey, can you walk me through the follow-up process again? Could you walk me through the adding on process again? It's difficult to do. Sometimes people don't feel comfortable doing it, or it's awkward, or there's not enough time. But if I have it all online, I know, gosh, I love this whole thing. I got to figure out adding on. I want to go through adding on one more time, just to make sure I learned it well.
And when you're doing that, obviously we're talking about speaking the same language. That means that the team now is speaking the same language. Like
that's correct.
They're talking about add-on, and they're talking about the greeting. And after the sale, they can say, hey, you know what? I forgot to do X, Y, Z, or I didn't do whatever the terms are.
Yes.
In sales. And then they can, celebrate together, or they can feedback together. They can figure out exactly the steps they forgot to take in order to make that sale more successful.
Correct. And this extends all the way to the manager. So think about it. The manager, of course, needs to be an expert in both the sales training and their ability to manage.
Yeah.
So if I'm noticing that someone has a really low average sale, I know you talk about KPIs a lot with your team, within your network, and KPIs are super important for any retail sales individual. And the two KPIs, just to give you an idea of what we track constantly, are conversion rate and average sale. They're the two most important KPIs for a retail salesperson, conversion rate and average sale. Let's talk about conversion rate. Conversion rate is the ability to close a lead into a sale.
So that's basically, just so that people who don't understand, because I bet you there are some, it's as you have people walking in, if you had 50 people walking into the store, if you converted, 10 people to do a transaction, there's a percentage, which is your conversion percentage.
Right, 20% in that example, yes. So your conversion rate would be 20%. What we have found is that people that have a low conversion rate generally are missing they're missing the boat on the initial conversation and what we call opening the sale. Or they're missing their boat, or they're missing the step in probing and understanding their needs. So now if we're all speaking the same language, and I'm looking at Yigal, and Yigal's got a 10% conversion rate, and everybody else has 20%. I'm gonna say, well, how is he connecting with customers? What's he doing when he walks up to them? Oh, he walks up to them and says, hey, can I help you today? And they say, no, I'm just looking. So his conversion rate is very low because he's not even getting a chance to engage with the person. So Yigal, I'm gonna tell you, look, your conversion rate is a little low. I think it's because of how you're opening the sale. So I want you to go back through the opening of the sale training, and we're gonna work on this week. I want you to come up with some fun ideas on how you're gonna engage with the customer right when they walk in. That's what speaking the same language is. We know where the issue is. We know where to direct them to get trained on it. And as a manager, my job becomes a lot easier because I know how to manage. I know how to identify what area a salesperson needs to work on to improve. And we go through a ton of different details like that. These are just one examples, but that's what speaking the same language means. By the way, for all the business owners out there, now you're looking at your stores. It doesn't matter if you have 1 store or 5 stores or 10 stores. I know what I'm looking at, and I know what I need to tell my teams to deliver on, because again, we're all speaking the same language.
Yeah.
If I know conversion rates are down in a store, I could tell that manager, hey, I want you to dive into opening the sale and probing and understanding needs. Go through the training with your team, and I want to check in with you in a week and see how it is going. That's what speaking the same language means.
Love that, man. And I think that, I also want to get to a second KPI, because that second KPI is what I teach in the mastermind and my clients in the courses, because it's a KPI that a lot of people don't even think about. And that's the average customer value, or the average customer spend. So talk a little bit about that, and how, talking that same language can help you increase the average customer spend in your business.
Yeah, so I'm going to give you 2 examples, 2 stories that are pretty interesting, and one of which is taught in a lot of the workshops and seminars by Harry himself. And he talks about a case study where American Express gave 10 mystery shoppers an unlimited amount to spend on their credit card to understand what the average spend would be in a typical retail environment. The only criteria was that you, as the individual, cannot go shopping and buy whatever you want. You are required to listen to what the salesperson says and recommends in order to complete the purchase. And in all 10 cases, the salesperson stopped the sale before the customer. What this means in real time is a customer walks in and you ask them about, what they're looking for. They're in pawn. It's okay, I want to check out your guys' jewelry. And you're showing them a ring and it's beautiful and they love it. And you're like, hey, can I package this up for you today? And they're like, yeah, absolutely. And you just closed the sale. We missed something here. Do you need a pair of earrings to go with the ring, or a necklace to complement the earrings that we just got with the ring? So if you as a salesperson are shutting down or stopping the sale before the customer, you're missing the ability to add on, and you're going to have a very low average sale. Great salespeople know how to recommend. And by the way, they always think this is pushy, which is, it's not. So here's the difference between a consultative sales approach and a pushy sales approach. Pushiness, the definition of pushiness, in my mind, is prematurely closing the sale. That means you're pushy. You walk in, you're like, hey, do you want to buy this? And you're like, no, I'm not even there for this. That's what pushiness is. Yeah. But if you build a relationship with this person and you're talking about, how great this gift is going to be for his wife and all this different stuff, and you're talking about all these important things, and then you just start recommending. All you do is recommend. The customer will say no when they're done, and they will not think it's pushy. They're like, no, I'm good. That's it. But for whatever reason, salespeople think like, I can't afford to lose this sale, so I'm not going to suggest anything else in hopes that they like me at the end.
I love that.
Another example was did a huge deal with Target. Target's a very operationally focused organization, making sure the shelves are stocked. They wanted to transition to a customer-facing organization. They wanted to know what that looked like. The reason why is because what they realized is when someone goes to Target with a shopping list, one, they deviate from the list like crazy.
Of course.
Right? You buy everything because Target's amazing. But
you can't not spend $100 at Target.
You can't do it. We all love it. I love it. I tell my wife she can't go there anymore, but she does anyway. So she always comes back with all this stuff. What ends up happening though is the items actually on their list don't get fulfilled. And what Target realized was that when someone leaves Target without fulfilling their full list, guess where they go to finish the last two items?
Walmart.
Or Amazon. I'm just gonna order on Amazon. I don't want to go back in there and drive it. I'm gonna order it on Amazon. So they're losing sales. All their salespeople has to do is when someone's looking for something and they show them, they would traditionally stop there. I need to know where the toothpaste is. I show the toothpaste. I'm like, okay, goodbye. All you have to do is wait and say, what else? What else did you come for? What else is on your list? I'm just consulting and I'm helping you. And I'm fulfilling the need. So that's a bigger play example, but it applies in pawn. You come in, you look at something, it's like, what else? What do you mean? It's like, did you know we have music equipment? No, I didn't know that. Yeah, let's go check it out. I don't know. The idea is just opening the conversation. That's what adding on is, and that's what increases average sale.
I love that, man. You talked about pushing this, and I cracked up because I always give this example when I went to buy my first car. I walked in and I said, hi, do you guys have a silver Isuzu Rodeo? That's exactly what I said. The salesman walks up to me and goes, if I bring it to you today, will you buy it? And I was like, yo, I just want to see it. But if I bring it today, will you buy it? I'm like, brother, that's not how you make a sale. And I walked away. That's when you said pushing this, it brought me back to that moment. And when you talk about like consultative, it's more what I'm hearing is you're helping that customer with the Target shopping list, finish their shopping list. If somebody comes in to buy a gift for their wife at the pawn shop, the earrings with that, would you like the ring to match it or the necklace or, how can we make this an even more incredible gift for your wife? Just giving consultation as opposed to pushing the product that they don't want.
Exactly. And we can go into so many different stories, and I'd love to someday, about all the different ways you add on, but it becomes a very important part of the sales process that most people miss.
Right.
Apologies. Hold on. How the heck did that just come through on my computer? We're gonna go back to
don't worry.
adding on.
Don't worry.
Holy shit. 1 second. I thought everything was on do not disturb.
It's all good, dude.
Okay,
you're not the first. You're not the first or the last.
Are you connected there?
No.
Hola, Yigal.
¿Cómo estás, bro? You're doing awesome, by the way, Justin. You're crushing it, bro.
Oh, well, thank you. We'll cut to adding on.
Yeah.
You know
when we
what?
go back.
Try to move just your camera a little bit because it has this.
You're fine.
You're fine.
You're
Is it fine?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if that thing moves.
It's all good. All right. So
we'll cut to adding on.
Yeah.
And so we could talk forever about adding on, but there's one area that is super, super important that I want to make sure that everybody listening understands. Adding on in a traditional sense means we're adding an item to the purchase, but that's not just any item. So what that means is if you have music equipment, okay, and you're selling a guitar, you have a guitar in the pawn shop and you're selling that. Some people would say that getting a guitar strap for the guitar is an add-on. It's actually not an add-on. It's a requirement. Same thing with picks. You can't play the guitar without a pick. It's not an add-on. It's a requirement for the purchase. In shoe retail, you need socks with shoes. It's not an add-on. It's a requirement to wear shoes. Do you wear socks with shoes? Yes. Well, here we go. We have some socks. So these are the differences between adding on with shoes is adding on a pair of, adding on another pair of shoes.
Yeah.
Providing socks or providing a pick for a guitar or a package of picks is a requirement for the sale, which is also another way that you add on to your average sale, is by making sure that you've completed the package of purchases. There's a necessary package that comes with every item. And you need to understand as a store and as a sales team, what are those necessary items that we have to just put in? That's just part of the deal. You need this. right? I mean, you got to have it. So anyways,
Yeah.
those are the little things that we talk about.
Love it.
Some of the fun we have within retail.
I love it. And I think it's important for people to understand that, because especially with the holidays coming by, you're gonna have people walking in who are gonna do layaways, are gonna do retail purchases for their whole families. So for their sons, their daughters, the wife, the lover, whatever they've got on that list. And so it's amazing to me that a lot of pawn shops don't say, hey, you got this for your wife. What about for your, do you have any kids? Oh yeah, I've got a son and a daughter. What's on the list for the kids? Oh, I'm going to buy the new Barbie, whatnot. Hey, do they enjoy musical instruments? And see if you can, sell them something in your store, as opposed to going to Amazon or going to another store to fulfill that list.
Yeah. And guys, the biggest thing when you're thinking about this, going, yeah, I know, but it's just so hard to do. Once you have opened the sale correctly, you've engaged and built a relationship with the customer. You've been a little funny or a little stern or however your personality is, and you've broken down those barriers. Whatever you recommend is in play, right? It's all in play. Any recommendation you make is okay, because the person will tell you, no, I'm good. I'm going to get it over here. And it's not going to be awkward. It's no different than any other conversation you have. It's only awkward, based on Yigal's conversation, when you prematurely close the sale. But you're already there and you're like, yeah, have you thought about what you want to get for your kids? By the way, that's important. It's important to get to that point before you take them to the cash register. So just as a step in the process, if they're at the cash register ringing up and then you recommend something for their kids, it's gone. It's bad timing. But if they've closed on, I'm going to take this, and you decide to open up the conversation about what else, it's perfect time to add on.
Love it. Love it, man. Let's go to kind of step 3. I think that, we'll go to 1, which is building confidence in your team and how high confidence equals more sales. And then 2, we talked about having everyone speaking the same language, right? Like there's no performance discrepancy between this store and that store, or this salesperson and that salesperson. And I think that the most important thing is to talk about like the training itself.
Yeah.
And so let's talk about that, the outsourcing of the training.
Yeah. So here's what we have found, and this is why Friedman U becomes so powerful. If we can outsource a critical component of sales or sales management training, then why not do that? Well, one of the reasons why, it's like, well, does the training work? Do we like it? Is it accessible? Like I said, going back to this idea of going to like giant, seminars and things, it's not always very accessible to do that. But if you outsource your training in a way that is economical, accessible, and replicatable, you will win. It has to be economical, accessible, and replicatable. That is what Friedman U provides. It is a consistent online experience that works. And the reason it works is because we've been doing it for 40 years and it still works today. And some of the masterminds even said, look, the greatest training I went through was back in the day. Well, it's still here. It's still here. It's modernized, right? We wanted to create a modern experience. I'm sure a lot of you guys have younger people working the sales floor. This is a little bit more consistent with their learning profile, because everyone learns a little differently, right? Like I'm an audible learner, I'm a visual learner, I'm a hands-on learner. Yeah. And this is the most applicable way to outsource this component of training. Again, scalable, reliable, and predictable. So what we've done is we've taken our full sales training course, which traditionally was a 3-day training. And it takes roughly, let's just call it 6 to 8 hours to complete it, because you're going through it and then you're practicing that piece, and then you're going through the next piece and you're practicing, and then you have to go back and go through the one you just went through because you didn't understand it fully. That is the power of going online. Training at your fingertips and accessibility anywhere you are. And you'd be surprised. Quite a few retailers, salespeople, they actually decide to go training when they get home. It's like, I want to learn this. I want to be better. And for the first time, they have the material to get better. That's what outsourcing training does. You don't have to create it on your own. You don't have to come up with you have to make it up. And that's powerful, because now all of a sudden you've got verified professional development given by a credible agency at your fingertips to make you better, Mr. Salesperson or Mr. Manager. I want to make you better. This is the investment I'm putting into you. And
I love that.
I can't tell you how many people still don't do this, which is shocking, because I don't know what the alternative is. The alternative is on-the-job training, shadow shifting. We don't consider that training. I mean, it's part of training, but it's not the only thing you need to do. So
I want to go back really quickly to something you said about, I don't know, 28 minutes ago, which was when you asked me the question, like, did you play a high school sport? And I remember the coaches for me were consistent at training me. There was always consistency in training and making sure that I was the best. Never would a wrestling coach or football coach be like, oh, just go on the field, let me train you for 3 days, which is what happens in retail. I'll train you for 3 days and then go out and play by yourself. There's always consistent training. And what I've seen in the pawn industry are those who are killing it and crushing it on the pawn side, on the sales side, is because they're investing in their teams to become better professionally and personally. And this is one of those things, to invest in their teams to do more sales. A lot of people pay commission. So them selling more helps the company, helps the bottom line, helps the pocketbook of the team member as well.
Yeah, 100%. The most successful retailers that use this program have their team on some type of commission structure. You sort of eat what you kill, sort of a thing.
Yeah.
And it's important and it's real, because ultimately what's motivating them as an individual to get better? Yes, there's this intrinsic motivation. I just want to be the best at what I do. And that's fantastic. But there's also some extrinsic motivators, if I can speak. One of which is compensation. Another one is recognition.
Yeah.
This is where it becomes interesting, right? If I go through the training, get 100% on everything, there's an ability to recognize. Yigal went through the entire training in a week, killed it, got 100% on everything. By the way, his sales are also up by 30% this week. So there's affirmation, there's proof of concept. The whole thing comes together. And again, it goes back to that outsourcing the delivery method and outsourcing the content, so you don't have to make it up as you go and you don't have to come up with it on your own.
I love that, man. So let's do this. You've added so much value to the show and to the listeners. Let them know how they can find you. And of course, if they mention Pawn Leaders, I'm sure they'll get a special deal of some sort when they contact you guys. So how can they find Friedman U, and what's the best way to sign up?
Yeah, so there's a couple different ways. I'm yours, so to speak. So we can do things a few ways. One, if you went to friedmanu.com, so it's Friedman, F-R-I-E-D-M-A-N, the letter U.com. You can check out our training solutions there and our pricing page packages. If you type in the discount code Pawn Leaders, you'll get 10% off any user base that you choose. We are also doing a kind of a cool promo for anybody who has over 50 employees or 50 employees or more. So if you have a multi-store operation, you got about 50 more users, we customize the portal itself with your branding and any of your operational training materials or any training materials you already have. We put it all on there, and it's for the same price as our normal library portal. Awesome. So Friedman U is accessible to anyone, but if you happen to have enough users to make it a little bit more custom, we'll offer you the same price for a custom portal.
Love that, man. So we're going to put friedmanu.com in the show notes, and don't forget to mention Pawn Leaders, or type in the coupon code Pawn Leaders to get 10% off. Justin, this has been amazing, man. Thank you so much for coming on here. Thank you so much for giving value. Even the small little things that you gave, I think are going to improve people's sales process. But at the same time, those of you who are listening, if you have 2, 3, 4, 5, 50, 100 other people that are right next to you in wanting to sell more, make sure you go to Friedman U, so they can all speak the same language. They can all get incredible training, and they can all improve their confidence. See, I remember these things, man.
That's right. That's right. Well, thank you, Yigal. I love being on here, and I hope we can do this again. This was great.
Awesome, for sure. For those of you who are listening, thank you so much for listening to the Pawn Leaders podcast. Stay tuned for the next episode. If you haven't joined us yet, join us in the Pawn Leaders community on Facebook. Just go to Facebook, put in Pawn Leaders community, and we'll pop up. There's over 1,000 pawnbrokers who are talking about leadership, marketing, strategy, and of course, sales. And we do have some people from Friedman U inside the group. So if you do have any questions on sales or how this works, go ahead and ask. Again, we'll put their link in the show notes. And don't forget to mention Pawn Leaders for your discount. Stay safe, stay healthy. Love you all.